This is the story of King David.
David, the last son of Jesse, a respected man with many sons, was considered a child born out of wedlock. If you've ever been the youngest in a big family, you probably know the feeling. The older ones speak first. The older ones go to battle. The older ones get noticed. The youngest gets the jobs no one else wants. For David, that meant watching sheep, which also meant not being regarded or being an unwanted wheel among his folks. Long days in the hills. Long nights under the open sky. A slingshot was slung around his shoulder, a harp leaning nearby, and enough silence for a boy to think his thoughts and learn to talk to God. It was in those fields that David learned courage in a way few boys ever had to. A lion once crept in and grabbed a lamb. Instead of running or shouting for help, David chased the lion and struck it until it let go. A bear tried the same thing, and David fought it off too. These weren't the kind of stories anyone believed at first, because they sounded too large for a boy his size. But that's what happened. Little by little, God shaped him when no one else was looking. Not far away, the atmosphere in Israel was tense. King Saul had disobeyed God. God instructed him to wipe out the Amalekites without sparing anything. He was to wipe out both people and animals because their sin was grievous before God. But Saul disobeyed and spared their king, Agag, as well as the best livestock in the land. God was angry with Saul. He rejected him from being king because of this disobedience. The Lord told the prophet Samuel that another king would rise. Samuel was heartbroken about Saul, but he obeyed. The Lord sent him to Bethlehem and told him to visit Jesse. When Samuel walked into a town, people got nervous. Prophets didn't wander around for small talk. They came with purpose. The elders trembled and asked if he had come in peace. Samuel assured them he had done so and asked Jesse to bring his sons. Jesse lined up the oldest first. Eliab was tall and had that kind of presence that made you think he'd be perfect as king. Even Samuel felt himself drawn to him. But the Lord whispered something Samuel never forgot. People look at the outside, God looks at the heart. Eliab was not the one, nor was the next son, or the next. They came one after another, each strong, each impressive, yet the Lord kept saying no. Finally, Samuel asked if Jesse had another son. Jesse admitted the youngest was still out with the sheep. That alone tells you how little anyone expected from David. When David walked in, still smelling of grass and wool, the Lord spoke again, this time with certainty. This is the one. Samuel uncorked the horn of oil and anointed David in front of his brothers. The moment the oil touched him, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David powerfully. He must have felt it in a way he didn't yet have words for. Even so, nothing dramatic happened next. No palace, no crown. David went back to the sheep. It's funny how God works that way sometimes. The promise arrives early, the fulfillment much later. Around this time, King Saul was tormented by a spirit. His servants suggested finding someone who could play the harp. One of them remembered a young man in Bethlehem known for his music. Saul sent for him. That young man was David. David played his harp, and Saul felt calmer. The king liked him and even made him his armor-bearer for a while, though David still returned home now and then to tend the sheep. Life can be strange like that. One moment, you're calming a king. The next time you're chasing a stray lamb through a ravine. Not long afterward, the Philistines gathered for war. Israel's army camped on one hill, the Philistines on another. The valley of Elah lay between them. Then came the giant, Goliath of Gath, a warrior so large that even seasoned soldiers felt weak in his presence. His armor alone weighed more than some men. Every morning and evening for 40 days, he stepped forward and shouted a challenge. "Choose a man to fight me. If he wins, we become your servants. If I win, you become ours." No one moved. Fear held the entire camp still. Back in Bethlehem, Jesse grew anxious for his sons on the battlefield. He sent David with bread, roasted grain, and cheese. When David arrived, the men were lining up, shouting defiantly despite their trembling. Goliath had just stepped forward. David heard him mocking the armies of Israel and asked why no one answered him. His oldest brother, Eliab, snapped at him, accusing him of pride. It's easy to imagine the heat rising in David's cheeks, but he asked again. His words reached Saul, who sent for him. David told Saul he would fight the giant. Saul looked at him with disbelief. David explained about the lion and the bear and how the Lord had rescued him each time. Saul finally agreed and offered him armor. It didn't fit. David took it off. He walked to the stream and picked 5 smooth stones. Then he stepped forward with only his sling, his staff, and faith stronger than the fear around him. Goliath laughed when he saw him. He cursed him, he mocked him, he threatened to feed him to the birds. David answered, "You come to me with a spear and a sword, but I come in the name of the Lord." He ran toward the giant. He slung the stone. It flew like it had been waiting for that moment since it was formed in the riverbed. It struck Goliath square in the forehead. The giant fell face first to the ground. Israel roared and chased the Philistines back for miles. David became a hero instantly. From that point on, Saul kept David close. David remained in Saul's service. He set him over soldiers as a commander. Everything David touched seemed to succeed. The people sang about him, which stirred something dark in Saul. Jealousy is a slow poison, the kind that starts as a whisper and becomes a storm. Saul grew suspicious. He grew afraid. He began to see David not as a blessing but as a threat. Yet before the shadows thickened too much, a friendship formed that still stands as one of the strongest in Scripture. Jonathan, Saul's son, met David and loved him with a loyalty deeper than many brothers share. They made a covenant of friendship. Jonathan gave David his robe, his armor, and even his bow. It was a powerful gesture, almost like acknowledging David as someone God had chosen. Jonathan's heart saw what Saul refused to accept. Saul's envy soon turned dangerous. One day, as David played the harp, Saul raised his spear and hurled it at him. David slipped away. Saul sent men to watch David's house. David's wife, Michal, warned him and helped him escape through a window. From there, David fled. His life shifted from palace halls to mountain caves, from feasts to hiding in the wilderness. A band of loyal men followed him, though they were often weary, hungry, and unsure of the future. His parents and brothers also joined him in the cave of Adullam. It seemed they were no longer safe under Saul's reign without David's protection. There were several times Saul walked right into David's hiding places without knowing it. Once Saul entered a cave where David and his men were hidden deep in the shadows. David's men whispered for him to kill Saul. David crept forward silently and cut a piece of Saul's robe instead. Later, David called out to Saul from a distance and showed the torn cloth. It was proof that he could have killed him, but chose not to. Saul wept and admitted David was more righteous than he was. Another time, David and one companion sneaked into Saul's camp at night. They found Saul sleeping with his spear stuck into the ground beside his head. David could have ended it right there. Instead, he silently took the spear and a jug of water. Once again, he called out from a safe distance and showed Saul what he had taken. For a moment, Saul saw clearly and blessed David, but the regret did not last. The chase continued. During these wandering years, David met people across the land. Some were kind, some cruel. One man in particular, Nabal, acted so insultingly that David almost lost control. David's men had protected Nabal's shepherds from harm, but when David sent messengers asking for food, Nabal mocked them. David gathered his men in anger and marched toward Nabal's home. But Nabal's wife, Abigail, heard what happened. She loaded donkeys with food and rode out to meet David. She fell before him and begged him not to shed blood in anger. Her words were calm and wise. David stopped, thanked her, and accepted her gifts. Later, Nabal died suddenly, and David married Abigail. She became one of the steady, thoughtful voices in his life. The years of wandering were hard. David lived among rocks, trees, and uncertainty. There were days of close calls, days of hunger, and days when morale ran low. Yet through it all, David strengthened himself in the Lord. His faith did not fade, even when the path ahead was unclear. While David hid in the wilderness, the Philistines rose to attack again. This time, Saul gathered his sons and soldiers and faced them on Mount Gilboa. The battle went badly for Israel. Jonathan fell. Saul's other sons fell. Saul himself, wounded and surrounded, fell on his sword. Israel's army fled. News of this reached David in Ziklag. An Amalekite came with Saul's crown and armlet and told David what happened. David tore his clothes and wept. He mourned deeply for Saul and Jonathan. His lament for them is still one of the most heartfelt pieces of poetry in Scripture. After the mourning, the path God set for David began to unfold. David asked the Lord whether he should return to Judah. The Lord said yes. David went to Hebron with his men and their families. The elders of Judah gathered around him and anointed him king over Judah. But it wasn't until later that all the tribes came together. There was conflict. There were years of tension between Saul's house and David's house. Slowly, David grew stronger. Finally, the elders of Israel came to David. They reminded him that even during Saul's reign, David had led Israel into battle and out again. They told him the Lord had said he would shepherd and rule them. They formed a covenant with him in Hebron and anointed him king over all Israel. The shepherd boy from Bethlehem, the one who chased lions and played his harp under the stars, was now king. Not because he pushed himself forward, not because he forced his way into power, but because God had chosen him long before anyone else believed it. For more stories like this, kindly subscribe, like, share, and comment on our videos. We love you.